The State of Football Part 78 edition here, brought to you by the NFLDraftBible.com, your new home for real football talk in the mornings. If you join us each and every weekday, welcome back. If you're a first-time listener, buckle up. It's a double chin strap kind of day. Of course, RIC in the place to be. Here, broadcasting live from New Jersey, the Jersey Shore. As a matter of fact, we're going to do some deep diving into NFL draft prospects. Of course, my co-host each and every day, John Murphy, down in New Orleans, the VP of personnel for the Toronto Argonauts, and joining us each and every Thursday. Make sure you lock in Thursdays because we have the one, the only, Dane Vandernat, the executive director of the NFLPa Collegiate Bowl, here with us. And Dane will break down some prospects. He'll give us an update here. And first off, Dane, how are you this morning? I know you missed me last week.
Oh, Joe and I sure did, man. But you know what? We still found a way to get it done, Rick.
Yeah, and John just left Joe out here flying solo for the show last week. So he was like a duck in the pond looking for some friends. Hey, somebody bail me out over here. But he got through it. He did a great job. So shout out to Joe De Leon. Of course, you know, here at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl that we work on, we've been having a lot of dialogue. I think that, you know, the agent community, the team community, the player community, they're waiting anxiously to see what we are going to do. So I do believe a more formal announcement should be in the works here. Maybe by the time you come back next week, see what I did there with that tease. Maybe we'll have an announcement for everybody. But for those out there that want to know, I mean, what can we shed some light on in terms of the whole situation with the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl?
Yeah, well, like you kind of led up to here, Rick. Obviously, late last week, we unfortunately announced the cancellation of this year's game just due to the ongoing pandemic and the issues surrounding getting everyone at the same place at the same time in a safe manner. So it's an unfortunate part there, but you know, we do have the good news in that we still want to recognize the players. We still want to get them out some swag gear and everything. Let them know, hey, look, you know, we think highly of you as prospects. And we're also going to provide an awesome virtual event for the guys, something where they can come in, they can learn some of the business side of football and can get a little, you know, comfort and familiarity, not only with the PA staff, but with some of the people in the business as well. So a lot more details coming there, but we're targeting a mid-January event still. And it's going to be an awesome virtual event. And, you know, obviously more details on the itinerary and everything else will be rolling out here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, collegiate.nflpa.com for more information. We'll have our latest news and announcements up on the website. Oh, by the way, you can get our entire watch list up there on the website. And the educational kind of aspect of our event traditionally is kind of, I don't want to say swept under the carpet, but it's not something that is really out there until the players arrive and they experience it. And they get to interact with all these players, coaches, industry people that kind of transition them to the next level. And it really is an education. And you talk about getting an advantage, going to the next level. Well, who better to learn from than the Players Association, which they will then become a part of if they do go on and have an NFL career. So we have a great event lined up. More news on the way. I can guarantee you that this man, Dane Vandernat, has not fought harder than anybody to try to do something of value for these players. So we will deliver on that. And again, it's the COVID world. It's the situation that we're navigating through. And hey, some other games are plowing forward and hats off to them. But, you know, we just saw what happened down at the Spring League. And you know what? That's a whole nother situation. So you can check out yesterday's show, I think, if you want to learn more about that fiasco. But, you know, let's go back to this past weekend. We'll look ahead at the upcoming weekend in a second here, Dane. But who are some guys here that kind of popped onto your radar for the NFLPA Bowl watch list?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about standouts from last weekend, it's hard not to start with Kyle Trask and what Florida did to Arkansas down there in the swamp, you know. But, you know, it kind of getting away from some of those you know, the guys we already know about. I mean, there are a couple MAC receivers that I thought stood out a little bit. For the undefeated Buffalo Bulls, you got Antonio Nunn. He hauled in 5 for 137 and a touchdown in their win over Toledo. And then Western Michigan's Dwayne Eskridge. Should we call big play Dwayne Eskridge, man? caught it, 7 balls for 131 and a touchdown. Also undefeated. They had their big win over Toledo last week. Both those guys kind of have some of those Z receiver traits. You want to see them, a little more physical sometimes. Both are a little bit to the smaller size, but I'll tell you what, both guys can run, and I think both guys making the most of some opportunities here up there in Maction. And then, you talk about Wisconsin, right, and what they did to Michigan. I mean, that was an unfortunate game if you're a Wolverine fan, but Mason Stockey, fullback there. How often we get shout-outs to fullbacks on shows, but able to get a touchdown, both rushing and receiving, leading the way for that Wisconsin Badger run game. I thought he really kind of stood out and put some good things on tape. Love seeing fullbacks get, part of the passing game there, and, love seeing big guys score. And then jumping out west, one of my favorite guys, corner, Diamadori Lenore from Oregon, right? Didn't have the flashy statistics, but you just saw versus Washington State, him be a consistent force in coverage. He's smart, he's tough, he's physical. He shows both in the run and the pass game. And then for SC, and their big kind of comeback last-minute win over Arizona, Tyler Vaughn, the receiver, right? Yeah. Again, another guy didn't put up real flashy numbers, but just consistent. Caught 7 balls in that game, reliable. And then, kind of a couple of the last guys I wanted to mention, some guys that really, I thought, elevated their draft stock. A couple Boise State defensive backs. Avery Williams, corner, had 2 blocked punts, returned 1 for a touchdown, had 8 punt returns, including a 33-yard score. He was all over the place on special teams, also starts outside at corner. And then they have a nickel. I'm going to butcher his name, so just forgive me ahead of time. But Kikala Kanaiho, consistently smart, always pointing out stuff. One of those guys always constantly communicating pre-snap, recorded 8 tackles in the game, 3 passes defense, and then he also had a return on special teams. He ended up fumbling the ball, but it's still an exciting play, and you really get to be athletic in the meantime, But those guys all kind of stood out for me. Watching some of these games from last weekend, obviously had 15 canceled, so some of our pickings were slim, but looking forward to this weekend's also.
Yeah, 15 games canceled, no games against ranked opponents, so maybe a little bit more dull college football week of action. Tyler Vaughn is a guy, you look at what Michael Pittman now has become for the Colts here in the second, heading into the second half of the season. And he wasn't flashy either coming out, but just a model of consistency. And I think you're going to get that from Tyler Vaughn's, a guy that can come in, and he might not be a wide receiver 1, but he's a guy that's going to come in and contribute and be NFL ready. Eskridge, who you mentioned, it's good to see him back at it again, because I think he dealt with an injury last year. Wow. So he looks like he's kind of shaping back into form now. I thought you were going to hit us with your guy, Dustin Crum, because I saw you showing some love for him on the Twitterverse. And if you're not following Dane, make sure you go look him up, D Vandernat on Twitter. Any comments there on the players he mentioned, John, or do you want to highlight Dustin Crum, who, hey, who doesn't love some action on the weekdays and getting some Antonio Nunn, and my guy, Jarrett Patterson, who's a junior, but I still love watching him run, and the Buffalo Bulls with the Wisconsin Whitewater coach up there. I think Lenore has just done an incredible job building up that program. What do you got there, John?
Well, Patterson, I think the other day had a 300-yard effort.
Yeah.
In that game. So I mean, he's literally rushing his way toward the NFL. Anytime anybody in the MAC, starts mentioning the quicker, faster, undersized guys, I want to hit mute, on them. Don't let the scouts hear about those guys. I'll just, get them filtered up to the north, and then I'll send them back down to the south in a year or two. But that kid is for sure jumps out at you, in terms of, as that kind of all-purpose guy, or, using him in a lot of different roles. I think the number one thing you look at in that conference, not only do you have the kids that are there and are playing, but now look, the tight end who transferred out and went to the portal to Virginia, is a, Senior Bowl guy for sure in the combine, conversation, with things. So, I mean, you're looking at that, the level of football on the regular played in that conference. And you would look at, the game and think the other night, Western Michigan, with how they played and how effective they were. And if you close your eyes and you didn't, watch from the beginning, Central Michigan's up 14-0 before you know it. So, it's a highly competitive, right? And the good thing to me is that, you've had your runs. Miami of Ohio's had one, Northern Illinois, now you're kind of seeing, Buffalo, taking the lead dog there, and the other teams are, all kind of, each one of the Michigan teams takes kind of their turn. So you have a highly competitive, group there. And then you see a lot of guys, right? The University of Ohio is literally going to have possibly 7 or 8 year run, of 2 brothers playing quarterback at the university. So they go from one Canadian kid to another, don't miss a beat. So I think, it's a very interesting conference to watch. It's obviously been really good football. We all kind of remember, the MAC. I think, we got to admit the Randy Moss, Pennington, Leftwich, that kind of really brought, the MAC to a different level. And then they had Roethlisberger, they had all those guys in that period of time, Charlie Batch, giving you a real throwback, there. But, like the MAC was that conference that they had the other guy, out of position. And I think now, when you're seeing a lot of the same thing, where we found almost there's a prospect on every team. And then sometimes there's even a better younger player, on that roster as well. It's very well suited. And I would say, and probably without too much pushback from Rick, the MAC, much better run than the Big Ten.
Hey, you know what? If I can chime in there too, John, I think you hit an important point, and that's that they got a lot of junior players that may not be coming out this year, but I mean, this is not just a one and done type deal with the talent in this conference. I mean, they've got some receivers that are going to come out. They got some skill position players all across the board, even linemen. And John, you know this better than anyone, especially due to the CFL's reliance on MAC-type players. The MAC facilities, they are getting better and better and better. When I went into Eastern Michigan last year, they have an NFL scout room that overlooks the team practice facility with 3 stations set up. Man, I can't get that at the University of Kentucky. But, Eastern Michigan's got it. Central Michigan, they were in old classroom portables last year, and because they're building a brand new facility. So, I mean, you really have the level of competition, the level of facilities going up in the MAC. And I think, you know what, you sit here and you look at some of these teams having success, it's only going to breed more. We didn't even talk about some of the other guys on Buffalo that are going to be playing on Sundays next year. So, the MAC is trending up. MACtion's a thing.
Yeah, and I think they're really, like, the other thing of being really smart, the way that, we created an atmosphere for Thursday night football, and that became kind of the in thing on Thursday nights in the past 20 years, to all of a sudden have those upset wins, but have some of those road games at stadiums and universities that people now know exactly who they are, and they became household names by winning that game against a top 25 team on a Thursday. Kind of became an in thing. And so for the MAC to kind of use up those other days where you think you got over, Monday Night Football, and then, oh, hey, here's a MAC game on, Tuesday, Wednesday night. I think they've really made a smart business decision, right? They have their niche. And the other thing is, no matter where you're watching that game, when we've been out of COVID, man, those fans are, I mean, those stadiums are packed.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing. I know one thing for darn sure when you're, out of COVID and having a fun time. You want to go have some fun time in a parking lot, go to a MAC game. Those people know how to party.
John would know. John Murphy, Dane Vandernat, Ric
Serritella. Word of mouth gets up to the press.
I might have heard from somebody here on the State of Football weekdays, 9 a.m. Eastern. Breaking it down, of course, collegiate.nflpa.com for our latest watch list, our press releases, updates on what's going on with our events. As you guys were talking, got a message from our friend Vincent Nicholson informing us that another NFLPa Bowl pro getting the big call up from the practice squad, Cole Christensen.
Oh, nice.
Getting called up for the Chargers this week. So definitely good to see Cole, putting in that work and getting the midseason call up here, and hopefully he can make his presence felt this weekend. And speaking of this weekend, Dane, another college football weekend on the docket, another college football weekend that I'll be spending from home. But what games are you going to be watching here on this upcoming weekend?
Well, obviously we got some marquee games. You got Wisconsin Northwestern, right? Coming on up here. Who's going to take control of the Big Ten West there, and who's going to potentially play themselves maybe into the college football playoffs if this continues in the, if they go up against Ohio State in the conference championship. You got the Bedlam series. You got Oklahoma State. Obviously, you need to see how Oklahoma State's going to rebound from their most recent loss, and which OU team is going to show up, the one that struggled early in the season or the one that's looking like OU of late. But I think tonight starts with Tulsa, Tulane, Zach Smith, Keelan Stokes, Allie Green and co. squaring off against Cameron Samples, going to the Senior Bowl, Patrick Johnson, linebacker, and a very competitive Tulane team. The record may not indicate it, but that team, John, as you know, has been playing some tough and competitive football much of this season. And then how about the big Sun Belt matchup at App State, Coastal Carolina? The Chanticleer is everyone's darling, right? Ranked for the first time, and going up against an App State team, has a quarterback, has some receivers, has a running back, couple offensive linemen that are potential, players for the NFL this year as a prospect. So it's going to be a good matchup, I think. It'll still be a good college football weekend despite some of these cancellations.
Yeah, we got to expand the college football playoffs, get Coastal Carolina in there, get Liberty in there, throw Cincinnati into the mix. Let's see what happens. Shake it up. But yeah,
those two teams those two and the University of Louisiana could kind of try to play their own bowl game. Winning coach gets the South Carolina job.
Yeah,
right. Just do what UCF did a couple years ago, right? Just go ahead and crown yourself. It's all good.
Yeah, that was an interesting one with Scott Frost there. Dane mentioned the Tulane-Tulsa game, John. I mean, Tulsa here ranked to number 25th now. They have cracked that top 25 ranking, but a ton of talent on both sides of the ball here.
Yeah, and you saw last week. I mean, they're down. Early, it looks like SMU, has done it again, kind of cruise control, at that point, and those guys just stayed in the mix. And the thing that if you weren't big on Tulsa prior to that, they were undefeated in the conference, right? So that, they were a team that could have given, SMU a run for their money. But like I said, when I went to, fortunately got out of the house, to see a game this year and saw SMU, man, they're doing some things down there where, they are not an easy team to prepare for offensively. And then they lose, their number one receiver, and the next two young guys they put in there, have been churning up yards. They turned the tight end into a feature guy, the last couple of weeks, starting kind of in that game against Tulane. But they're doing stuff on, they're second down, and depending on the yardage, they're pulling out 2 D tackles. They're running off three DBs and putting on. I mean, they got a fast track, both offensively and defensively, and are rotating, so many guys that you can see how a program is trying to elevate and then keep that elevation going by saying, when they lose the 2 or 3 seniors, you got so much experience of having gotten these guys on the field a lot earlier than other teams in that conference try to do it. And my thing on the other side, you talk about the facilities and stuff, where Tulane was playing versus what they have now for not only football, but almost every sport there. It's such a shame that they're not getting to play in front of their fans at home. Because that SMU game, just like last year, that Thursday night game against Houston with all the 40-plus yard plays and a last-second Hail Mary to J.J. McCleskey, when you have a stadium it's literally 20,000 people that are right there, right behind the bench on both sides, and how those kids are interacting with each other. And I mentioned it a couple of times because I've seen it out of Patrick Johnson. When you're senior leaders and you come off the field after a big play or a long drive that could be debilitating and frustrating, and you don't have to see one position coach take their eyes off the field because the vets are taking care of it for themselves, little by little, that's a team that's making their way back. I know David Turner got a big laugh, you got to when I mentioned, hey, do you realize how many bowl games Tulane won prior to like 1970? There's a real horizon there for a lot of programs, and that's a really good matchup tonight. Might give Tulsa a little upset alert there because Michael Pratt, as a freshman, starting to see the game faster. And little by little, he's, self-admittedly said, like, hey, some of those games early, 9 out of 20, 18 out of 35 is just, man, this college game is not like high school, right? All of a sudden, you've seen a kid kind of mature that they know no one's coming off the bench. They're not replacing you with the senior. The job's all yours. And you see in pregame, everybody kind of rallies around that kid. If he plays his game, just like Tulsa last week on SMU, could be a quick week, there to one and done. And I do like this. You got to like the factor that Tulane, after beating a top 25 team for the first time in about 10, 15 years, didn't mind throwing some shade at Army as they got him down the road there, just letting Army know as they left the facilities, you're no longer in a top 25. Have a safe trip home. Hey, sometimes you got to have a little swag, even if you're 5-4.
Disrespectful, man. I'll tell you. Sound the sirens. Upset alert, though.
It didn't go that far. Just you can turn on, hit the little honker, like hit a little honking noise or something. Let's not get too loud. Well, I might have to go a little upset alert later on now that my Bears screwed me up on Monday night.
That's right. We're gonna get to that in a second. And I will say that Allie Green the fourth. I've had so many scouts now put him on my radar. I think he's gone from underrated to overrated. But I mean, a guy that is just big, strong, physical, and could have some top 100 love. I think he's probably a mid-round prospect here, depending on how he does with the draft season. All right, well, hey, we're halfway through the show, as we have each and every Thursday. Dan Vandernat joining us here on the State of Football weekdays, 9 a.m. Eastern, your new home for real football talk in the mornings. Dane, always a pleasure. You have a parting shot, something you want to leave our listening audience at home with before you wrap it up?
Yeah, just stay tuned. We got a lot more details rolling out, as you mentioned, Rick, on the NFLPA Bowl, and just looking forward to continue to evaluate these guys and get them that opportunity to get in front of the NFL. But always good talking with you guys, man. John, love the passion as always. Ricky, love seeing that baby face, even though Joe's was a little bit younger last week.
Yes, a lot younger. And I know I told you I'll be hitting you with my feedback there as we piece together this NFLPA Bowl roster. Sometimes we get work done on the air here. See what we did there? All right, Dane, we always appreciate the time, brother.
Yeah, guys, appreciate it.
All right, Dane Vandernat there, of course, NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, and I have a feeling that when he comes back next Thursday, we just might have an announcement for you all out there. Of course, the announcement from the Monday Night Football fallout, we didn't get to it on Tuesday or Wednesday, but yes, I have evened it up with my Minnesota Vikings. You like that, John?
1-9.
You like that? I like that. So the standings are tied back up, and we're going to have our next guest here in just about 5 minutes or so. Neil Stratton of Inside the League will join us at 9:40 a.m. Eastern. In these 5 minutes, we'll give you our Thursday night preview, which, oh, by the way, I've got a secret to confess. I was on a call with David Turner and Ryan Roberts yesterday, and Dakota Follett. Shout out to Dakota behind the scenes. And so I said, David, because he lost the bet the first go around where he, I still have his shirt coming. I said, David, here's your chance, brother. You could double down now, double down, double or nothing. I said, the ball's in your court. Here's the opportunity. I said, I didn't get you your shirt yet. He goes, oh no, I got the Cardinals. So we've now brought David Turner back around again with the Cardinals, and Seattle's at home, and I've got him on the Cardinals bandwagon. I know I'm converting you too, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean that was last week the probably the level of emotion swinging back and forth there, right? You thought for sure, here's the Buffalo Bills and great drive, and now hey, this becomes a take it or leave it game for the Cardinals had that gone that way. and they flip back around and, just like DeAndre Hopkins said, it was 3-on-1, and, that was not, a benefit because I could still dunk on him, and, and that's what he did. The interesting part of this whole matchup here is how close and how similar that game was a couple of weeks ago. Both starting quarterbacks led their team in rushing. And amazingly, Russell Wilson outrushed, Murray in that game. Now, that's got as much to do with all the injuries to the backfield, there in Seattle. Peterson pretty much shadowed Metcalf most of the night. He goes and doesn't really have a standout performance. Meanwhile, Tyler Lockett basically confirms his way to the Pro Bowl in that game, with 15 for 200. Christian Kirk gets behind the defense not once, but twice. And it was just, running up and down the field. And the only time of the game that the Cardinals led was when it mattered, which is the final score. So, you look at that and you see how these teams have played. And ever since Turner doubled down on professing his love for not only COVID, but, and all things COVID, but for Russell Wilson for sure, his preseason, and he doubled down and said, without a shadow of a doubt, he's the number one candidate for the MVP award. He has basically lost 3 games and turned the ball over 8 times. So either that's the curse of David Turner voting for you or trying to vote for you, or, it's just the pressing issue of their O-line is okay. All their good backs are not playing, and you're using 2 younger guys. Now you're trying to force the ball at times to get the plays going, and you're creating some turnovers. And when you look at last week, the one thing, if you're looking at Seattle, that kind of, it's not even frustrating, it would be concerning, is that one play where I'm not saying he turned it down, but Jamal Adams was not the aggressive Jamal Adams that you normally see on that one play that they showed a few times, and then showed Pete Carroll sort of having a conversation with Jamal where I'm not saying he made a business decision. It looked like he sort of got caught in between, and then it looks really bad on film because it looks like you made a business decision, in the red zone, not to fully engage, and got caught like, should I turn and cover the tight end, or, oh, damn, here comes the back, and, I'm going to get run through if I kind of throw my shoulder in here. So to me, Seattle now, this is a game where after losing to the Rams, you're in that spot where, thankfully for you, the Bears lost, but hey, you could be down toward that 7 mark, which is, you got to say, like, you don't mind it in the sense of, if you're going to get the Eagles, you might not mind it. But if you end up with a game against Tampa in Tampa, that's probably not where you wanted it, because we said the same thing about earlier in the year. If Seattle was hosting New Orleans or Tampa, even with no fans, it becomes, the home field advantage here. So to me, this now has switched where Arizona has a win in hand. They're coming off that big win last week. Seattle needs this game way more than Arizona. And I think we're getting another 4-quarter game, and I'm going to flip the coin and stick with, how I rolled with it the last time, as much to try to get the win, as much as you're saying, if Seattle were to lose this, you are really saying that they are a team that's going to struggle potentially to make the playoffs at that point. It puts the Rams in a driver's seat. It puts Arizona for sure in that driver's seat, there. I think when you look at the games that the Saints are going to play without Drew Brees, it's not Kansas City and the Steelers and, stuff like that, right? It's 2 games with Atlanta, possibly 1 with Philadelphia, right? They have Atlanta, I think, 2 out of the next 3 or 4 weeks. There's some winnable games there with what they're doing. And I also think that Jameis Winston and the vertical part of the passing game, and then some stuff with Taysom Hill, will give teams a very different variable and some really different plays coming out of the playbook there that, probably have not been part of Sean Payton's rotation the last 3 to 5 years. He's going to get to go back and, use some of his Giants and Cowboys plays, here. So I'm going to say it goes the other way. And, Seattle this time, kicks a field goal. Hopefully we're not in overtime so we can get some rest, but I think we're seeing another 30 plus, on both sides. And I would expect Metcalf's performance to even out Lockett's, not so much. And, the one thing there that, like I said, you have to see is whoever is able to start generating a pass rush and some turnovers, that one of those two teams has the best shot of really doing something as we move forward to the second half of the year.
Yeah, and Snacks Harrison getting the call up. He'll be playing some snaps here tonight. Chris Carson, as far as I know of, is out for the Seahawks. I see our friend Ryan Roberts in the chat room going with Seattle as well. Here I am, week 11, still trying to make believers. I've got to preach some more of the good gospel to John and Ryan here on the NFL Draft Bible. I've converted David Turner, who was on the bandwagon more than anybody, but I still am pulling teeth here when it comes to John and Ryan. Of course, the pick'em standings tied. I will come back tomorrow, one game up, as I will go with the smart decision. As I stated, about a month ago, that the Cardinals will sweep the Seahawks season series this year. Well, I just might throw on the Nostradamus birthday suit tomorrow. The State of Football here, weekdays live, 9 a.m. Eastern, your new home for real football talk in the mornings. If you are just joining us now, we had Dane Vandernat of the NFLPa Collegiate Bowl earlier in the show. Tomorrow we'll have Big Law Lawrence Johnson and that guy, David Turner, the doctor, joining us with the bum ankle and all for a Football Friday. If you want to go back and get our Around the League episode every Monday with Ralph Ventry, of course, Tuesdays with Russell Landy. Yesterday, we had a great guest in Coach Keith Grabowski and what they're doing on CoachTube.com. Baldy Breakdown Seminars now available on CoachTube. And, oh, by the way, we had one last night with the edge rushers, so another great turnout there. Great to see Brian Beasley in the chat room. This is what we do for all our chat room people. So, hey, if you got a question or a comment, feel free to chime in, and we love to see you guys out there. All right, our next guest, he is Neil Stratton. He joins us here each and every Thursday, 9:40 a.m. Eastern, of course, InsideTheLeague.com, SucceedInFootball.com, the author of Moving the Chains, as well as Scout Speak. By the way, if you subscribe to NFLDraftBible.com today, we still got a few copies of Neil's book, Scout Speak, that we will send to you complimentary. So big shout out to InsideTheLeague.com, a great friend of ours, someone we've known here for quite some time now. Neil, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, man. I was kind of hoping that De Leon would be back. He really did a great job last week. I mean, I guess I'll settle for working with you and John, but, it was a lot of fun last week. I got to tell you, I wasn't sure if you were on the unemployment line or not.
Yeah, hey, the way Joe navigated the solo show, I just might be here looking for some new work. But Joe did a great job, and I got a chance to watch the show. So always staying on top of things with the industry insider news that Neil does a great job keeping tabs on. Quite frankly, nobody else in the business does it like Neil does. And I think the big kind of fallout or shakedown from the whole all-star game circuit, Neil, it's a lot of trickling, cause and effect ripples here in the all-star game circuit. I mean, what are you hearing? What are you predicting? What are you sensing here as we are now, just about 2 months away from the all-star circuit?
Well, we've talked to a lot of people. Obviously, the College Gridiron Showcase moves forward, still doing its invitations. The Senior Bowl, I believe, is up to 60, maybe 61 invitees. That's about half its roster. Jim Nagy's really been pretty busy over the last, especially the last couple of weeks, just adding players at an exponential rate. What I have found out, however, and this is a bit disappointing, I guess, but certainly a concession to the times, the mezzanine level of the, I guess it's called the Riverview Towers now. I keep calling the Adams Mark, back to the old days when it was the Senior Bowls Hotel, will be closed this year to everyone except for Reese's Senior Bowl personnel and actually, obviously, players, coaches, those who are affiliated with the game. You guys both know that second level is like the one of the biggest hidden football parties of the year for people who are in the industry. If you're a scout, if you're an agent, if you're a player, if you're a marketer, if you're a financial advisor, if you're almost anyone who wants to have access, who normally travels in these circles, you'll be barred from up there. And that's going to be a real big difference from previous Senior Bowls. Still hoping there'll be access to the new stadium at South Alabama. But as far as the hotel, that's a big deal. It's just been such a great place for everyone to kind of break bread, catch up, learn about what's going on. It's always been said that if you tell a secret at one end of the field, at Ladd Peebles, it makes it around to the other end of the field, the other goalpost, within about 5 minutes. So, that's Senior Bowl's always kind of been the hidden gem of the All-Star circuit, I think, maybe even of pro football, because it's the place where everyone kind of goes and they can be a little more relaxed. There's no game on Sunday. But having the hotel shut off, at least to a lot of people, definitely like me, maybe like you guys as well, it's going to be a real hindrance.
Significant news there, John. Any thoughts?
Yeah, we mentioned, some of the things, when it comes to these events, it's not only the event itself, it's, the city, it's the state rules that they're going to have. We mentioned it earlier, when we were out there, last week and even just, corresponding with different folks. They wonder, will the games or the teams collectively decide on a 3 to 5, group staff to send, and who will that be? Would it be area guys? Would it be sending a guy out of the office, but you don't want to have maybe your GM or, certain people, with the chance to kind of catch things? So are you going to keep the people that have been out on the road kind of out on the road? And, will the guys in Texas cover the things in Texas? The same thing in Florida, the same thing maybe in Mobile, and possibly that could be a way to kind of start doing some of these events, depending on how everything is going on. And, if you have just regional coverage or the regional teams being responsible to scout those different areas, you're going to get, like, Neil mentioned, a lot less of that kind of water cooler, kind of talk. Everybody would sit there and, watch the 2 playoff games, on Sunday and, prepare for the Senior Bowl week. And, if you're spreading that out, like I said, it also could get to that variable of they're going to quarantine, do the Zoom kind of things as interviews, and you might have teams that are very used to kind of staying at the same hotels. It could be come first serve, and the type thing of a couple of teams agreeing to be in the same hotel, or a couple of hotels not wanting, people from all over the place, and making kind of business decisions there. It'll get really interesting then to see, how teams would go ahead with that coverage, but also how would the game then be working to ensure the coverage that they want and need, in the sense of, does that mean it's only going to be this media? Because you will get, right, even though there's COVID and even though there's rules, one thing, we've seen it in baseball, we've seen it in other sports. When you had that hub, you had to give equal opportunity to equal opportunity. You could not just have the NBA covering it. You had to at least offer some opportunity for other people to cover the event. So it'll be really interesting to see, if this is all going that way, what kind of tug of war is there? NFL Network, ESPN, the Senior Bowl itself, once you open that door, there's a lot of friction there, behind the scenes, with the Pro Football Writers Association, the local media, and then the national media on how do you get to coverage, because you still have to have somebody there, right? You can't just put the camera on all, and run it for us. We'd love it. We'd be okay with it, but you're not going to get a great product for ESPN or the NFL Network, if you don't have guys there. And I kind of doubt you're going to have, Mel Kiper in a hazmat suit standing on the sideline.
Well, you could get a lot of pool reports is what you might see this year. And, yesterday's show, Neil, we kind of talked about some of the free agent showcases that have popped up around the country. And I kid, but, there's Ja Rule's Fire Festival. there's the Alliance Football League, and then there's the Spring League. And, it's just really unfortunate. But the point I'm trying to make is, God forbid, you have a situation like the one that just occurred in San Antonio. God forbid there's an outbreak in Mobile. I would believe the combine would then be officially on pins and needles.
Yeah, well, we know the combine is going to be different. We don't know how different yet. And I know y'all talked to scouts. I had a couple conversations this week, and there's been speculation that it's going to be nothing more than medicals and maybe interviews this year, and maybe no Lucas Oil Stadium. That's a pretty drastic change, and that'd be a lot of lost content for the NFL Network. That'd be a lot of missed opportunities for every aspiring scout and every member of the draft Twitter army out there. I don't know, but the thing that's distressing to me, guys, is we're about 90 days out from Indianapolis right now, around there. I'm sure there's someone at a much higher pay grade who has a lot of answers on this, or at least has some idea. I don't, and the people that I talk to don't, and the people that I talk to are a lot better, a lot more well placed than I am, and maybe I've heard some answers, but it just seems like to me there still is a lot of uncertainty. I guess there's a lot of uncertainty everywhere in every walk of life these days, but for people like us who are entering into the very busiest part of the year, it's a little unsettling when you don't have any answers about these kinds of things. And we'd like to think the Senior Bowl would go on pretty much uninhibited. That'd be wonderful. But I'm not sure if that's even realistic to believe. Obviously, I'm not trying to be a doomsayer. I'm rooting for every game and every showcase and every opportunity and every platform, just like I rooted for the Spring League. But the reality is we don't know anything, and we may not know anything until moments literally before these events actually take place. That's distressing. It seems like every week this is what we say, but it's just frustrating not to have any answers.
Well, when you're dealing with a virus and a pandemic, and I think the most comparable thing we can really go back to in history is the Spanish flu, because it kind of lingered around and came in cycles. And I think that's the unpredictability of it all, is that you can't predict, even though 3 months sounds so close. As you guys know, so much can happen with this virus in that time. So it's going to be interesting to see. But going back now to the free agent showcase, obviously we were out at the hub in San Diego. They did a phenomenal job. I saw Greg Dortch now is on his way to Chicago, getting a workout with the Bears off of that. But now the next thing that's on the docket is this fan control football that I've had a slew of agents hit me up about. I know you've written about it several times in your Friday Wrap newsletter. What can you tell our listening audience at home, a lot of them who are agents or industry-related folks, what can you tell us about the Fan Control Football League?
Well, we partner with FCF, and just like we've already discussed, all bets are off as far as there's obviously going to be a lot of uncertainty, but based on what I've seen and the way they've gone about things, I do really feel that they're going to be very proactive about what they face. They are going to have a bubble in Atlanta. They're going to control who comes in and who goes out. It's a limited. We're not talking about 53-man rosters here. Obviously, they've got a different business model. They've got a limited roster size for all the teams. And the thing that's unique about the FCF is fans will vote on the composition of the teams on a week-to-week basis. It's also only a 4-week, playing season, because this is kind of like a kickoff for them. This is, no pun intended, this is something that's going to be, they're kind of trying to figure it all out, but this isn't exactly how it's going to be going forward. With all that said, if I'm an agent, I consider the FCF. I mean, again, we're not talking about NFL caliber salaries. We're not even talking about CFL caliber salaries, but we are talking about a chance for players to go out, get paid to do what they love to do, maybe make some new film. If nothing else, maybe grow from the experience, and spend 4 weeks on a field instead of on the couch. And that's not a negative, I think, for anyone who wants to play, compete, and be an athlete.
Yeah, and I think they had like Merrill Hodge and some pretty reputable coaches last year. I don't know if they've announced coaches for this year at all.
I'm not sure about that either. I think they have. I'm not as up to date on some of the inner workings of the league, but we've try to help them just spread the word as far to the industry, kind of tell people that they're out there and what they're looking for, and that they've got tryouts going on. They'll have a tryout on Sunday in Atlanta this coming weekend. And, again, it's just one more opportunity. It is, again, not the NFL, not the CFL, but it is an opportunity to go and play. And it looks a lot more like football than sitting around and talking about football does.
Absolutely. The state of football here, Ric Serritella, John Murphy, joined by Neil Stratton, winding down here on the Hour of Power. What else is cooking over at Inside the League, Neil? What do you got going on? Succeed in football. What is the fans going to get, those who subscribe to the Inside the League email blast, the Friday wrap? What should they anticipate to see there tomorrow?
For Succeed in Football, we're working on, everyone loves to talk about who's the next GM, who's the next head coach, who are the hot lists. We're going to work on a list dedicated. Who's the next hot direct player personnel on the college level? Who's the next GM on the college level? Who are the guys that are really doing it right and who are ready to step up, maybe step up to the league, maybe as a chief of staff, maybe as a scouting assistant? These are the guys that seem to do it right, have their act together, have impressed me. I certainly don't know. I don't know the DPPs at all 225 or what have you at Division I schools, but have had a chance to meet a lot of them, be really impressed by a lot of them. We'll talk about that in Succeed in Football, our free blog. As far as the Friday wrap, we'll look at the mock drafts. We're getting to the point of the season where most of the bigger mock draft prognosticators have put together something that's updated at least since August. We'll look at who's rising and who's falling. Again, it's not the same as talking to an NFL team. It's not the same as having access to one of the 32 boards, but it is an interesting indicator kind of progress and what's happening and all those kinds of things. Is Trevor Lawrence still the number one quarterback on every board? We don't know yet. Is Justin Fields going to eclipse him on any of these boards? Does anyone have the guts to do something like that? Most of these have taken place most of these have been posted earlier in November, kind of before Lawrence got hurt and was on the shelf for COVID and what have you. So my guess is that he's still number one across the board, but we'll find out more and we'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll kind of dissect and analyze in the Friday wrap.
Well, and the one variable X factor too, right, is the players who test positive for COVID when they do go through that medical in Indianapolis. Will something be there that didn't exist previously, right? I mean, it's a legitimate concern, and Trevor Lawrence is one of those players, so that could have a very significant impact on his draft stock. I would imagine some of the things that you're hearing in terms of what COVID could do to the brain, to the body. There's got to be some concern. Obviously, we don't know a lot, but there's got to be some concern there. Before we wrap it up, Neil, any prediction? John's going with the Seahawks tonight. I'm trying to make him see the light with the Arizona Cardinals. Having a little fun here. You got a prediction for who wins the game tonight?
So now I got to go against one of you guys. You're both. All right, I see how you put me on the spot.
Come on over to the good side, brother.
I predicted Russ Wilson will be the MVP before the season started. I got to stay with Russ. I think after an emotional victory like last week, like the Cardinals have had against the Bills, there's got to be some little letdown, and that may be all they need. I'm going to go with the Seahawks. And listen, 12th man, come on. I mean, even with nobody, I don't know what the limitations are on the crowds. I don't know how many people there. Are they letting anyone in there?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, even a few thousand fans, I think could make a little bit, could be heard on the broadcast because those guys are pretty loud out there. After my Saints, one of the most vociferous groups out there. So we'll see. If you're there and if you're watching and you're there on Seattle, don't let me down, 12th man. You gotta make this happen so I don't look bad tonight. So the Seahawks pull this out.
I'm telling you, I'm fighting all odds here. I even see Sia in the chat room hopping on the Hawks bandwagon. Everybody's on the Seahawks tonight. I got news for you. Kyler, special delivery again. Put it in the books. We'll be back to talk about it tomorrow, Friday, 9 a.m., of course, along with John Murphy, my co-host each and every day. John, parting shot for the people.
Yeah, I mean, I think, totally different sport, but, the one thing that we really loved and love about watching last night, you got to see so much of that raw emotion as kids lived out their dream and got picked, right? I mean, that's what we're missing, but we've seen now that you don't have so many, of the variables that we got used to seeing with the NFL draft and, other things, being, now televised and being as virtual, kind of a nice change of pace that now there's no kids in a green room. There's nobody sitting at home by yourself, kind of locked in there waiting to get picked. Everybody's got kind of a long drawn out process now where, they're all at home and trying to keep their crazy cousin from being in the background, there. So kind of thought it was interesting and really a cool setting to see how many of the different families, with their different cultures and their different backgrounds. And, the storylines became more about how those kids, were able to do that. And you saw so many different variables of family dimensions there, of how much parents and how many people it really takes to get your young athlete, your child from being a high school to a college star, to now having the opportunity to watch them play professionally. And, a couple of them really stood out. The Bulls kid, Patrick Williams, who got drafted, who could not be a nicer kid on that night, to basically give all the credit to his parents, for raising him the right way and putting him in the right situations. You saw, a kid from Nigeria who's only been in the country for 4 or 5 years, and you really see the difference of where that kid was when he was a high school age kid to imagining now that he's playing in the NBA and what that's going to mean for him and his family for not just this generation, but, generations to come. It continues to tell you why we want to try to find a way to do things properly in the off season here, is that for so many of these kids that are trying to now make this run toward the NFL, this is the final hurdle. And that final hurdle has now become quite the hurdle, right? You think you see the finish line to this marathon, that you've been running to try to get to the NFL, and suddenly the 24-mile marker is being moved back to about 30, 35 miles as it would appear. So whether it's listening to Dane and waiting the next week to see what kind of virtual opportunities they can come up with, hearing that, from Neil that there will be invites and there are invites going out, to the showcase in Dallas, waiting to hear, there's invites, but, like, hey, Hula Bowl, I know you're out there in Hawaii, you kind of have to follow that up with some ideas of how this is all going to work, right? Like, that's what I think the scouts and people need to hear is tell us how it's going to work so people can make sense of that. Because like Neil said, if there's trepidation in going, if the teams and their scouts, like the guys that are on the road, they're the ones that have been safe. They're the ones that know how to do it. You got to know what you're doing before you go. Knock on wood, Rick and I were able to do it, and you're sticking around your people. And then when you come back, you kind of make sure you're good before you do your next thing. You have to really put that kind of effort and emphasis, on things to be able to do it. And you leave with the parting shot. And it sounds like we're just taking shots, at those people. What you can't do is you cannot fundamentally think good enough is good enough, right? And that's kind of the overriding message that I've heard, from the players that were down there. You can't think if we're clear for a day or a week or a team or 2 teams or 4 out of 5. Like, good enough is not good enough when we're dealing with this, because we all know it just takes one little situation like that down in San Antonio to kind of create chaos, for everyone. And that's what I think we don't need in this scenario. And that's why I said, hey, we can all point fingers and we can all mention the names of the people involved. That's a black eye for everyone, when really what we need to be doing is kind of working closer together and leaving the competition part for when there are, times where competition kind of has more value than it did yesterday, right? It's more important, I think, from all of these games, and a lot of these situations that are available, work together. If you figured something out, pass it along. Don't just kind of keep it, to yourself, because there's so many of these kids. We saw it, like I said, we saw it last weekend. You hear it in the voices and the text messages and the tweets that these kids send out when they're at the spring league, and things like that. You want to talk more about the stories of, Greg Dortch, getting a legit shot. They just lost their punt and kick returner. We could go from watching a kid work out to seeing him play for the Bears, down the stretch. We want to get back to talking about that. The best way we can do it is to kind of share the information on how are you logistically working with this COVID, because, hey, it doesn't mean the smartest person in the room is not always the one who comes up with the best idea. Somebody might have an opportunity, that they've thought this thing through in a different way or in a different concept, and it would be great to share it with a larger audience.
I couldn't have said it better myself. What a great way to wrap up today's episode. It has been the State of Football Part 79 edition here, November 19th, 2020. Make sure you log on, become a disciple today, NFLDraftBible.com. We've got the 50% promo code Familia50. And oh, by the way, that is good for tomorrow night's Friday Night Scout School with Ryan Roberts and David Turner, who, oh, by the way, will join us tomorrow. In fact, we've got a really special treat for you next week. I think Ryan Roberts will be joining us every day. And, of course, we'll have Big Law on the Football Friday show tomorrow, along with Dr. David Turner, John Murphy, myself, Ric Serritella. Big shout out to all of our guests here today, Dane Vandernat and Neil Stratton. We'll see you tomorrow.